Welcome to the Journey Home podcast, where we explore the remarkable paths of ordinary people who have triumphed through life's storms to find unwavering faith and a profound sense of meaning. Through intimate interviews, we dive deep, revealing the unfiltered truths of their journey. Together, we'll explore faith's transformative power, the resilience of the human spirit, and the unshakable truth that no matter how far we may stray, we are all on our journey home. Welcome back to the Journey Home podcast. I am so excited to be here with you today. Today is a special day in my life, my 34th trip around the sun. I can hardly believe I'm even saying those words. I can't believe it's June, let alone middle towards the end of June, let alone my 34th birthday. And I thought, what better way to ring in this next episode than to kind of recap all of the lessons that I've learned over the course of my 34 years here on Earth. Every year, I ask my closest friends 3 important birthday questions. Shout out to Catherine Banco. This actually started with her. She had shared with my husband and I 3 questions that she always asked, and I couldn't exactly remember what her questions originally were, but my own interpretation is as follows. So the first question is, what is the biggest lesson that you learned in this most previous trip around the sun? So what is the biggest thing that I learned in the 33 years of, time on this planet? And then the second question is, what do you hope to gain in this next trip around the sun? So what do I hope year 34 will bring? And then what do I need to remove that I'm not going to take with me into this 34th trip around the sun in order to create space for the new aspects of my life that I want to make room for? So we usually ask these questions at the beginning of the dinner or the birthday party, whatever the event is. And then by the end of the event, we kind of recap and come back to those 3 main questions. So for the nature of today's episode, I'm going to dive into kind of the major lessons that I learned and what I would quantify as the pivotal points in my own life. And then guide it all the way into answering those final 3 questions. I have to say, I haven't been on camera or in the Journey Home podcast mindset or set in general in over a month. And so I'm forgetting, I look here and not here. I already am like, should I have redone that intro? But you know what? We're just going to keep it rolling. We're going to keep it real. And I think authenticity is something that I've always wanted to kind of shine through with this podcast. It's something I've said from the very beginning. And I think it's something that all of us really value, because for so long, it felt like once Instagram became a thing, we were living a very curated lifestyle, which is great and comes with its own pros. But I think the downside is losing that authenticity. So this is the unedited first cut shot, and I hope you enjoy. So I remember always growing up just feeling like birthdays were so special, and every summer our family would take a vacation, and it usually landed around my birthday. And I just remember one year we were down at the beach and a rainbow came out and I found a shark's tooth, and birthdays always felt really special, and really thinking about coming into the world on this really specific day. And I remember around 19 years old, I learned about astrology and the different zodiac signs and how those are governed by our literal day of birth. And I think that was what really captivated me about the idea of astrology and the zodiacs and all of that kind of stuff. And I know I had talked about in one of my previous podcasts kind of moving away from that. And I think some of moving away from that is just realizing that there's even broader and deeper wisdom beyond that. And I think I was looking too closely at the stars and not enough at the heavens. And so now I'm coming from that kingdom perspective. But my infatuation with birthdays went as far back as I can remember from day one. Really thinking about like my fifth birthday is, I think, the earliest birthday I can really remember. My eighth birthday felt, really pivotal and kind of a marker. And then all the way up to my 34th. So at 19, I just was super infatuated with understanding that each of us come into the world during a different season, a different time of day, a different astrological sign. And when you think about the nature of considering all of those things, my birthday lands sometimes on the first day of summer or the day right before the summer solstice. And then I have other friends whose birthdays land right around the winter solstice, and thinking about the difference in our personalities, a winter baby versus a summer baby versus a spring baby and a fall baby. And I love kind of thinking about it in that nature of what season did you bloom? What season were you given to this earth? And sometimes we can approach our birthdays begrudgingly. I know that 34 has kind of hit me with a ton of bricks. I have always loved the idea of getting older and being an adult, and my parents can attest to that. Growing up, I always wanted to hang out with the big kids, as I would put it. And I just always wanted to be older. I always wanted to be in the phase where you're talking on the phone, driving the car, owning your own business. And as a little girl, having my own career was the thing that was so important to me. And as I get older and really thinking about coming into this age of 34, it hit me, what do you want to do? What do you want to create? And throughout my 20s, I was so excited to create a space for healing. And that is what we see emotion today. And I assume, much like a child, I came into that with very specific intentions, and then you pour your heart into this thing and you set these intentions, and then you just start to watch it grow. And the emotion community, I will say this for the rest of my life, and I say it with tears in my eyes, is beyond anything I could have imagined. Like beyond. If you are a part of the emotion community and you're listening right now or watching right now, or you were a part of the emotion community and you moved away, I just want to say, like, from the depths of my heart, I am so thankful for you. I'm so appreciative of you, and I love you. And what you've helped us create is truly living out our mission and our vision to heal, connect, and inspire the world through unconditional love. So thank you. And so my 20s were about pouring into this thing that is now emotion. And that community includes the people that come to our classes. That community includes our amazing staff that makes it possible, whether it's the girls at the front that are greeting you by name, our connector crew, our front desk staff, or our amazingly talented instructors that are guiding you through an incredible class, or our awesome, super energetic coaches that are making sure that you're moving safely and functionally, or people that were a part of our community and are now on our staff, or people that are just coming for the first time or have been with us through all of our evolutions. My 20s was about building this thing with you and us growing together, and me really forging the path of what it is to be me. And up until my 20s, up until college, I kind of lived in this environment of I'm so thankful for the family that I have. And the family that I was blessed with raised me with so much love and so much guidance. And my needs were met physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually. I'm still so close to my mom and my dad and my brother and my cousins, uncles. I was so blessed with that. And when you have such a tight knit family, you kind of fit into this mold and you think that that's your identity. And then I remember going off to college and starting to kind of challenge, who I was and what I believe. And thankfully, my parents gave me the space and time to do that. And what I found in my 20s is that I was a very high achiever. I definitely dedicated myself to what we would think of as like perfectionism. And I was wrapped up in the identity of I must be perfect and I must do in order to be loved, in order to be of value, in order to be seen. And I really wish I had known throughout my 20s that that is not the decade to dot all the I's and cross all the T's. That is not the decade where you necessarily know exactly who you are and are done with your people pleasing perfectionism ways, or that you need to, hit every milestone in that decade or you're going to fail for the rest of your life. But I didn't realize that. And so throughout my 20s, it was this constant battle of who am I? Who am I not? How do I show up in a world that makes people like me, makes people enjoy being around me? And it was a lot of this me mentality without even, realizing it. But I think a lot of kind of that me-centered thinking comes from the fact that we go from these insulated environments, or for some people, no guidance and no insulation and no support, and then are thrusted into adulthood or considered to be adults. But we don't talk about it in school, what that process looks like and what identity even is, or self-confidence versus self-esteem. And I had developed a level of self-confidence in myself that was wrapped in my identity and self-worth because I had no self-esteem. I didn't think that I was inherently worthy, and I struggled a lot with guilt and shame without even realizing it. But that if I could do these things or be these things, then I would be worthy. Then I would be somebody that people, look up to or want to be around, or whatever that thing was. And all of that mentality was coming from the dark side of the opposite side of a really positive coin, right? I wanted to contribute. I thought it would be important to create a environment where people can come and feel seen, heard, and valued, and all of these different things, and that hard work and discipline and effort matter. And that if I can work the hardest and learn all these things and be the best at everything that I do, then surely I can't fail. And then I hit 26, and all of those strategies led me into burnout. It's something I talked about in the very first episode. And so thinking about the trips around the sun, I would say my hardest years, keep hitting the mic, it's like really close to my face. Just ignore that. My hardest years were 26 to 31. And those lessons just about literally caused me to lose my life. That's how intense and serious I was about my identity or lack thereof. And if you are into a numerology and astrology, again, I know so much about this stuff. It's like really crazy transitioning away from it, but that is the time when you hit your Saturn return, where Saturn is in the exact place that it was when you were born. So the years leading up to that and the years following that. And, in some cultures, it is the time of initiation where the child leaves the tribe and goes out and forges themselves into adulthood. And we don't talk about that in our modern day culture, that there is kind of a reckoning period where we decide whether we want to or not. We decide, our life decides for us. Am I going to grow up? And when I say, am I going to grow up, I mean, am I going to figure out who I am? In some cases, most importantly, who I am not? Am I going to define what my adult life looks like and become the provider of my destiny and the person that makes decisions based on their own experiences and not from the overarching guidance of those around us? Even though we do need guides, it's really that time in our life where we get to decide, am I going to be the victim, which is someone that needs to be saved and guided? Am I going to be the villain, which is just the dark side of the victimhood coin, which says I'm going to create obstacles in the hero's life because I don't feel worthy enough in myself to be the hero. So I don't want to be the victim, but I don't think I can be the hero. So let me be the villain. Or am I going to take hold of my life and be the hero and the main character of my own story? And we think about the hero as the one slaying the dragon and doing the thing that saves the rest of the people. And a part of the hero's journey and a part of the hero's story is absolutely that. But when we think about the hero's journey, it's usually taking an ordinary person, you, me, and forging them through this path of making them question their identity, their self-worth, their self-confidence versus their self-esteem, and shaking all of that to the ground so that we move out of a space of operating from our ego and into the space of operating from our spirit, our spiritual gifts, the fruits of the spirit, the thing that is defining you based on your inner essence of who you are as a person innately, and letting the fruit that you bear be the byproduct of the tree that you are. And if we spend our whole life trying to focus on the fruit that we're trying to bear and forgetting that we ourselves are an unshakable tree, we have deep roots that we can nourish all the way to the center of the earth and entangle with these other roots of community and trees that we value and flourish and grow from that space, then we miss the whole plot, which is we are not here to be the fruit. The fruit drops from the vine. We are not here to be the tree that needs the other roots in order to be supported for our worth. We are to grow our own roots at some point. We are to build the strength of our own trunk and realize that we are our own tree, and that through being our own tree, we can bear our own fruit. That we aren't our fruit and we aren't our roots and we aren't our trunk or anything like that. We are the whole byproduct of the choices that we've made based on the hand that we've been dealt. And so from 26 to 31, what I realized is all of these strategies that I had insulated my identity from were coming from a place of fearing that I wasn't enough. And again, you'll hear this theme come up probably a lot in these podcast episodes. And I think it's worth bringing up because that's the thing that I see so much plaguing the 20-year-olds that I know right now, is this fear of not being enough. And while I'm observing some 20-year-olds realizing like it's okay, to make mistakes and use 20s as the decade to really try and figure it out, I still see so many people gripped by that fear of, what if I am not worthy? What if I don't accomplish what I've set out to do? Then what? What does my identity rest in? And this shuts off every 30 minutes. I have a camera, not a video recorder. So you may have heard me say this 100 times and you're like, why doesn't she just edit this out? Well, it's because once we get going, we just flow. So I'm going to pause this right here and I will be right back. So as I was saying, when we don't understand that obstacle of forging our way from becoming the main character of our story, the hero of our story, then we fall susceptible to carrying out the strategies that may have allowed us to be successful children. and successful through our adolescence, but that doesn't mean that we will necessarily become a successful adult. And when I mean successful, I don't mean making a ton of money or, um, having this lavish lifestyle. I mean success from the standpoint of genuinely knowing who you are, genuinely loving who you are, even if there are parts of you that you're still working to grow and um, shape, but actually believing that because of the person that you have worked on becoming, you are worthy. That you are worthy just based on the fact that you you are loved, that you were created in and from love. And even if you didn't receive that from your parents, you have breath in your lungs, you have a beating heart, and you are so valuable and so important for this time right now. And so from 26 to 31, I was really wrestling with that. And each birthday, I would just wait for the relief to come, and it didn't. And finally, I remember hitting that 32 mark. And all of a sudden, it was almost like this cleansing water washed over me. And the things that I was trying through effort to release, things like people pleasing, perfectionism, the feelings of unworthiness, just all of a sudden started to move away. And some of that was just the intense work that was required of me from 26 to 31 to figure out who I was and who I was not, and unprogramming how much of my personality had been shaped by the fear of not being accepted by my peers. And so, figuring out, okay, when I say this way, that, governs a positive response. When I say this that way, that's a negative response. So I want to behave more like this. Or, watching people that I was inspired by and being like, okay, this is kind of how they navigate. And I am inspired by that. And so I want to be a little more like that. And going from looking outside at the rest of the world to figure out who I want to be, and really starting to realize that I, within myself, can be the woman of my dreams. And so at 32, it just all started to click. And I don't mean I woke up on June 19th on my 32nd birthday and all of a sudden it just all worked out. But I noticed through the course of that year, the work that I had put in from 26 to 31 of really going from kind of like a young adult or even adolescent to me as the adult and the woman that I am today. It all started to kind of connect. And for my whole life, as far back as I can remember, at 8 years old, I never wanted children. It was something that I wish I had wanted, but it was just never placed on my heart. I remember my brother and I would get in little arguments, like he would be like, "Who are my kids going to play with?" And I don't know, but not mine. And I say that lovingly and jokingly, but I kept waiting for that kind of feeling to come. And 32, I started to kind of build strength in myself and start to value parts of myself that I was learning to love. And by 33, it was just really starting to land, and my focus and attention was less about who am I, who am I not, what do I value, what do I not value, and more about how can I contribute, how can I be of service. And it reminds me a lot of the way that I structure the intention of my yoga classes, which is every single class we start in the beginning in stillness, just simply listening to our breath and connecting to our body, connecting to our own cadence, connecting to our own internal rhythm, feeling our heartbeat, witnessing the qualities and conditions of our mind, and really pressing pause. And I encourage our students in that moment to let that moment be about you, right? I think we could do a better job of letting our 20-something-year-olds know, like, let this decade be about you. And I don't mean from the standpoint of overly self-inflated, but I mean like Spend those years diving into yourself. Spend those years moving away from the noise of needing to be something yet, the noise of needing to please everyone all the time, the noise of like exploring the world or overworking or not working or, find your rhythm. In my 20s, I worked my tail off to create what we now have, which is emotion, and that felt right for my spirit. Other friends of mine felt like they were meant to travel. Other friends of mine thought that they were supposed to start a family. But let your 20s be about self inquiry, just like the beginning of the yoga practice. If we don't set aside time in our life to do that, then it bleeds into every relationship, every thought, every conversation. And next thing you know, all we're doing is being consumed by every thought about ourselves. And yes, we live in a culture where selfies are, everywhere, and iPhone and Instagram, how many likes, how many follows. And it in some ways has become a dis-ease of the heart and the mind. But some of it is because we're not giving people permission to spend time with themselves and to be okay with that. So in our 20s, if we're doing that, just like the beginning of the practice, if you're thinking about your own breath, connecting to your body, witnessing the condition of your heart, the quality of your mind, then you can make appropriate intentions about what you need for that day. And just like we've all heard 100 times, we put the mask on in the airplane on ourselves before we extend it to somebody else, because if we don't have oxygen, then we can't provide oxygen, for our neighbor. It's no different. I had spent that time from 26 to 31 really dedicating out of necessity, out of having to. That was during COVID, and we had so much going on that I won't even get into because I've talked about it in previous episodes, but I was forced to find myself. And I know that sounds really cliche, but you have to. You will get lost in the hustle and bustle of life. And to think that we would know ourselves from who we were as children into the activation of becoming an adult, it makes no sense, right? We have to come to this place where we look at ourselves in the mirror and we decide what we believe and we don't believe. And maybe it's in alignment with what you were taught growing up, and maybe it's a little different, or maybe it's completely different. But are we even checking in with ourselves and what we believe based on what we actually believe or what we want to rail against? Because that's also just a belief in kind of response to another belief. Are we spending time getting to know ourselves? And so at the beginning of our practice, that's what we do. And at 32, I started to kind of, in that analogy of the yoga practice, understand what my intention needed to be to equip me to become on the path of being whole. And by 33, I was so dedicated to giving back. It was the birth of Journey Home. It was beginning to understand exactly what our systems are at the studio so that I can pour into the people that want to help us grow, so that I can pour into our instructors, our front desk team, our coaches, our community. Wanting to create new and more things, because now the question wasn't who am I and who am I not? The question was, now that I know who I am, how do I spend the rest of my life giving back? And so 33 really, well, I'll get into question number 1, I guess now. My biggest lesson in my 33rd trip around the sun is, in order to be of contribution to this world, we must dedicate time spent with ourselves. Time spent asking ourselves honest questions. Did I show up today in a way that I would want to sign my signature to? And if not, why? Am I practicing grace and compassion and empathy towards who I am? Am I giving myself permission to change from day to day as I evolve and inquire more about myself? And in doing that, I then learn through practicing on myself how to extend that to my neighbor. If I know how to offer grace to myself, and how we do one thing is how we do everything, then I just will naturally offer grace to a friend. or somebody that may be a perceived enemy. But if I am at war with myself, if I am an enemy in and among myself, how do I expect to create healthy relationships when I am at war within myself? And so 33 was the year where I felt settled in who I was. And even though that will be a constant process and a constant journey, it was the first year where I could honestly get to the end of the day and not have to overly self reflect about myself because I was in such alignment with who I was that it was more about how am I contributing? How am I becoming a part of the change that this world needs? And what a noble thing to want to do. But if you start trying to give to others before you yourself know who you are and feel internally fulfilled, that can end up being a selfish process or a selfish tactic of giving, giving, giving in hopes to receive. But when we spend that time at the beginning of practice, when we spend those few years in our 20s or whenever it hits you, really identifying who we are and building those strong roots and building that strong trunk, then the fruit that we produce is not for the rest of the forest to see our fruit. It is in hopes that we would provide shade for somebody else to come and pick off of our branches and be nourished through our own nourishing. And when you do that, when you find alignment with yourself, what I found is I have these really amazing friends that I've gotten to choose that feel like family. I have this incredible husband that I get to pour into every day, that pours into me every day. And it's like as my relationship towards myself and with myself began to bloom from a space of love and no longer from a space of unworthiness or fear, I literally watched the garden of my life come alive. And so 33 taught me that there will be times when I may not have the answers, but I trust myself to, at the bare minimum, figure it out or learn how to figure it out. And that it's okay to ask for help. And that one of the greatest gifts that we could ever provide others is to be of help. And so if I find receiving from giving help, then why would I prevent somebody else from receiving in that way? It's okay to also ask for help. It became, in this year 33, this symbiotic relationship with myself and the world. I've come to understand my relationship with God on a whole new level, a level that I don't have the language to speak yet. But because of what I'm finding in abiding in God's love and walking with Jesus daily and being filled with the Spirit of the holy essence of God, I'm finding these creative avenues to create new programs that I'll be launching in the coming years to help people on their own journey of understanding their creator and where they've come from and all of that. And so my biggest lesson in this year 33 is take the time to get to know yourself and know that it's not selfish if the end result is once you know who you are, then you can appropriately understand based on how you operate, how to give back to the rest of the world. And there's so many beautiful quotes. I can't remember the one that I'm thinking of right now off the top of my head, but it's like the purpose of life is to find your purpose, and then the gift of life is to spend the rest of it giving it away. And so 33 taught me, to honor my strengths and to honor my edges or the areas that I'm not as strong, because then I found people in my life that I get to connect to and build community with who are strong in the areas that I am not. And we get to fit together like this beautiful puzzle. I'm going to try not to get too emotional about this next thing that I'm going to say, but it's already happening. So Um, I guess I'll go into question number 2, which is what do I hope to gain in my 34th trip around the sun? And if I'm being really honest, what I hope to gain is to grow our family. And I know that, there's all different thoughts about discussing, when you're in the process of trying to get pregnant and having babies and all this different stuff. But for me, it's something I almost want to like scream at the, on the rooftops because it's not something I ever desired. And all of a sudden, God placed on my heart that it's time for me to become a mother. And so Troy and I have decided that we are going to start to grow or try to start to grow our family. And this path has been so eye opening. And a part of me wishes that I had started this journey sooner. I am going to be really honest, and some of you might think that what I'm about to say is TMI, but you can always fast forward. But I am going to share a little bit about this journey in hopes to make others feel comfortable to do the same. And truth be told, my cycles are very irregular. In 2021, I had a total of 6 cycles. 2022, I had a total of 7. Last year, I had 10, which was my healthiest year yet. So far this year, I've only had 3. And I share that information because, as you age and you start the process of maybe having a family, we spend our whole life thinking that if you blink too many times in the same room with a guy, you can get pregnant. And the truth is, for some people that might be the case, but for so many, especially now with the degradation of our soil and the lack of nutrients, and even worse, the amount of toxins in our water. I've heard that you would need to eat the total of 4 tomatoes because of our quality of soil now, as it would have given you the same nutrients in our grandparents' day with just 1. And so my hope for this 34th trip around the sun is that Troy and I would be blessed enough to have a baby. And I say that from the most humble space. I have so many people near and dear to my heart in my life that have experienced miscarriages. Nadia just came in, so you might hear her. People in my life who have gone through the IVF journey, or carrying a child for full term and having a stillborn. People that are struggling to get pregnant. All of these different things. Families that have had no trouble. So you really do run the gamut. And so this 34th trip around the sun is really helping me understand, those irregularities with my cycles have to do with an imbalance in my hormones, maybe an imbalance in the way that I had been dealing with my stress levels, and really coming home to what it is to be a woman and to be in this feminine embodiment, and that we have multiple different phases throughout each month, and that these phases should be celebrated and understood and nourished and nurtured. And so in the coming episodes, you will probably hear a lot more about the journey of motherhood and all that entails. And I'm so excited. Like, I cannot, what a gift. And if that's not your journey, that is perfectly fine. I don't want to share this from a space of making people think that, if that wasn't your journey, or that didn't end up working out for you, or that wasn't something that you were called to, that I'm saying anything in regards of if that's right or wrong. I never wanted children, never thought that I would want children. And when my heart changed, it changed fast. And Troy's done a really good job of keeping up with that train. And, thankfully, like, he's on the same page. And I will definitely be keeping you guys updated, but it is one of those things, that we're really new to, and so I'm trying to understand, like, the boundary lines of what I wanna keep private and what I wanna share, but, um, you know, unlike, I think, how I would have felt in my 20s, in my 30s, I am down for any advice, any recommendations, any thoughts or whatever. There's nothing worse than unsolicited advice, but I am really new to this territory, and um, some of you have wanted children your whole life. This is something I've just experienced in the last couple months, and I love knowledge and information. So, any knowledge or information that you have, if you're listening, please feel free to share. And yeah, so that's what I hope to gain in my 34th year. And so, what I'm learning in question number 3 that I need to make space for, the thing that I need to let go is really white knuckling through life and overfilling my plate and living from a space of burnout. I want to create space for nourishment. I want to create space for collaboration and projects and growth, but I want it to come from the essence of um, total total abundance. There are abundant amount of resources. There is an abundant amount of community. And too often in my 20s, I sacrificed my rest, my cortisol levels, my health, all in the name for getting to that next thing. And I'm thankful that I experienced that because it taught me a lot of grit and discipline. And I know when times get tough, I can dig my heels in. But I had my first regular cycle this last month in over half a year by simply slowing down, by waking up and taking a second to stand on my porch and watch the sunrise, by pausing between my sips of tea or coffee, by making sure that I eat breakfast and a nourishing lunch and a nutritious dinner, by spending time with people that fill my cup, and by realizing that the things that seemed so important or the things that felt like such a big deal in my 20s, and they were, maybe don't matter as much anymore. And that a day spent at home with my husband or my parents or my closest friends or our emotion community fill me more than anything in this world. And so, what I hope to kind of remove is life in the fast lane and slowing down to genuinely smell the flowers. Um, Time's about up for this next segment, so I am going to pause there, but I will be right back. So, I guess to sum it all up, today is a very special day to me because every year on my birthday, it gives me an opportunity to sit and reflect. And going back to the yoga class analogy at the beginning of practice, we set our intention. And the way that I define that intention is that it is the foundation of your practice. And every day we can check back in with ourselves and understand that our foundation is strengthening and in other ways changing and transforming. And then the class starts. And quickly we can forget our breath or start to get caught up in what is my neighbor doing, or why isn't my practice the way that I want it to be, or this is the best practice I've ever had. And we forget about our intention. And so throughout practice, we have to be reminded of our breath. And throughout practice, we have to be reminded of our intention. And then we get on the other side of that experience, that journey per se, and we come back to where we began, which is in silence and surrender. And through that, epic experience, we get to reflect on all that we've learned, and we get to kind of sharpen and in some cases redefine our original intention, solidifying our foundation even more. And so today, on June 19th, 2024, I have the honor of looking back at the last 365 days from this day till this time last year. And the me last year had no idea that by the end of that year, she would desire to be a mother and to grow her family and to have a baby or babies. The me this time last year had no idea that by the end of this year, I would feel so secure and so at home in who I am, even though I have so far to go, that all I desire is to contribute and to give back. The me this time last year didn't fully comprehend yet all of the lessons, the hard learned, hard earned lessons of those honestly painstaking years of 26 to 31 would not only pay off, but they would be so unbelievably rewarding that I wouldn't trade them for anything. So as I look back at this last year from the peak of my 33rd mountain, gazing upon the peak of my 34th, I want to be reminded of the power of coming back home within ourselves each morning or each day, or if we forget, just like in our yoga class, that we would carve out time to just slow down. And that, just like the answer to question number 1, my biggest lesson in year 33 is when we spend time getting to know ourselves and when we dedicate parts of the day or week or month or quarter or year reflecting again, then thinking about ourselves can start to become the background noise, can start to become kind of the music in the background. And that our contribution and our service towards others gets to be the main theme. And that in and of itself is the most rewarding thing. And that you end up in environments where people are pouring into you and you're learning how to receive. And you get to pour back into others and you get to cherish the gift of giving. And that it becomes this fountain-like quality where we all begin to overflow and someone may come in with impure water per se, toxins of self-doubt and fear and lack of trust and all these different things. And we get to pour into them and then they start to pour back and it creates this symbiotic relationship of healing. And it becomes one snowflake at a time, eventually transforming into an unstoppable avalanche. And that's what's beginning to happen this year. And that my hope is that I would be sitting here this time next year, either pregnant or, dare I say, a child in my arms, or at least a little more knowledgeable about the tenderness of this process. And so in order to do that, what's not coming with me is the sacrifice of my health, the sacrifice of nourishment. And that as I come to nourish my own body, my own home, my own heart, my own mind, my own soul, my own spirit, I create environments that are nourishing for the people I have the honor of walking this path with. And what a journey life is. I mean, I literally can't believe I'm 34 today. And there was a part of me that didn't even think I would make it to this stage of life. And I know that sounds maybe ridiculous, or some of you felt the same way before, but life just feels so delicate. And what a gift. And so if you have a birthday coming up, maybe you ask yourself those same 3 questions. Question number 1, what is the biggest lesson you've learned in this last trip around the sun? Question number 2, what do you hope to gain on the other side of this next trip to come? And question number 3, what are you ready to lay down? Um, Kind of as the sacrifice or the thing that you're releasing into the fire of transformation as you make this journey from one age to the next. And I don't know how long this episode is. It does feel like it might be a little bit on the shorter side. But I've been a little busy and preoccupied now with my mind just being so filled with this idea of growing our family. Nonetheless, I am committing to one episode at a minimum a month for this whole year. And that's exactly what I intend on doing. I already have our guests lined up for July, and I cannot wait for that episode to drop. But for now, I hope that you got something out of this episode today. I love reading your comments and feedback and questions. People have been letting me know episodes that they want me to cover and topics that they want me to cover. If there are guests that you want to see hosted on here, Journey Home is simply a passion project and a labor of love to provide information and an open conversation with people on all types of topics. And so, at the very least, I hope that you have enjoyed the last 5 episodes up until this point, and I hope that you enjoy this one. And it is that, reminder of, I think it's a Ram Dass quote, because at the end of the day, we're just walking each other home. So whatever today finds you as, I hope that you are so filled with the ability to know that you are loved. I hope that in this moment, as I look into this camera, I can't see you, but I hope that you know that you are seen. Just hit the thing again. I can't be serious when my chin hits the microphone. And I genuinely hope that you know that you have so much value, whether you realize that right now or not. And I spent many, many years of my life thinking I had none. Please do not let shame, which is this feeling that I am a bad thing, override the gift that you are. And if you are having a hard time believing that you are a gift, I would just invite you to take a moment in total stillness, to close your eyes and to imagine gazing in your eyes and looking at all that you are and all that you've done, and realizing that the world was made a better place because of it. And then maybe practicing the willingness to forgive yourself in the moments where you acted in a way that is outside of your integrity, and know that you don't have to be defined by those days anymore. So I hope that you feel seen. I hope that you feel valued. I hope that you have people in your life that can make you feel heard. And most importantly, I hope you know that you are deeply loved. So that'll do it for this episode of Journey Home. And I can't wait to be on here again with you guys in just a few weeks. Thank you and have a wonderful day.